Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Diversity and Equality and Inclusion Charter and Guidelines, which are a core policy document in early childhood education and care. One of the things that I think is really important in terms of having the guidelines is that actually we have diversity and equality guidelines in the Irish sector. We're very lucky to have that because many other countries don't have that. They have frameworks which include diversity and equality, which is really, really important, but they don't necessarily have guidelines which specifically address these issues. And in that case, I think Ireland, we're lucky that we have these guidelines to guide us in terms of diversity and equality and inclusion. Initially, we had the guidelines in 2006, and those guidelines weren't fully implemented, and in 2016 we revised the guidelines, and now there's training that goes along with the guidelines through the County Childcare Committee, so I think that's important to say. But why the guidelines? I suppose from my own perspective, working prior to working in the Technological University Dublin, I did a lot of work with Pavy Point and with Traveller Children, and this was sort of the foundation of the work that I've continued to do. My work is really focused on diversity and equality issues and social justice issues. When we look at our society, of course it has changed. We have a lot of new communities in our society now, which is wonderful. But Ireland has always been diverse. And when we began the process of looking at the guidelines at the very early stages in the 2000s, we were addressing, that diversity that was in the country. And now we need to address diversity in not dissimilar ways. It's not about changing what we were doing. It's about embedding it much more within our practice.
Embedding an anti-bias approach is more than just introducing activities or materials into the setting. It is about being very clear, or it being kind of at the heart of our service. So how do we go about ensuring that everybody knows and everybody is part of embedding this anti-bias approach? Because I cannot do it on my own. Everybody needs to be working, from the same hymn sheet. It is about, I lead and model and motivate the team, but we ourselves as a team, what I want is that people are doing this work not because Anne says or the guidelines say that we do it, or Sheilta and Ashton say, or the inspectors say. This is because we know that this is important work, and because we want to do it. We see that it makes a difference in children's lives. And I think as early years educators, we are perfectly placed to do this work because we are, a lot of the time, we are the people, the first step for the child outside the home into society.
The first things in the guidelines is the charter, the notion that if we have a charter in our services, it means that we have to begin the process of thinking about how we want to include all the diversity that we have in the setting. And that's really important, because then we make a commitment to actually addressing that diversity. And diversity is about all of us. It is about the majority child, and it's about the minority child. So it's about all of us. It's about everyone who's embedded in Irish society. So inside the guidelines, you'll find that the main theoretical focus, I suppose, is an anti-bias approach. And it has been framed like that because of the multiple diversities that we have in society. It's beyond a multicultural approach. It's deeper. An anti-bias approach is really about looking at the majority and the minority. It's not just about looking at the minority, and it's not just about looking at one minority. It's about looking at us all. We all have multiple identities. Children are beginning to grow into their multiple identities, and they're coming with their gender, with their different languages, with their different cultural heritage. So their disabilities, abilities, we're all diverse. And that is the beauty of the anti-bias approach, because it actually addresses all those diversities. And it offers us a space to really think about how we are embracing this work with children. In the past, when I began this work, lots of people said to me, why are we addressing this in early childhood? Children are too young. You're just making a big deal of things here. But we know from research that children are forming their biases and their opinions at a very early age. We know that. And we also know that society at the moment is going through a very, very difficult time in terms of how we treat people from minority groups, how we refer to them. The emergence of social media has given voice to people that maybe we wouldn't hear before. So there are really serious issues for our society, and it is really important to start this work at a young age. It takes time, but I think it's really worthwhile, and I think it's actually, just to go back to that point that I made in the beginning, how important it is that we have diversity, equality and inclusion charter and guidelines for early childhood in Ireland. That is really, really important, that we have that tool so that we actually can use that to support the work with children and move towards a better society. That's what the work is about, because people get hurt, and the children that we work with get hurt. So it is imperative, I think, that we address this work for the betterment of all of us in society, all of us.
As a team, how do we work to embed the anti-bias approach, the diversity, equality and inclusion guidelines and charter into our service? So we do that by, as a team, sitting down and reviewing our policies and procedures, our ethos, our mission statement. We rewrite them if needs be, so that I facilitate a shared vision of what we want, who we are. So we all work to write them up. Everybody knows what's in there. They have their voices have been listened to. They have inputted into it. So it is a working document. It's not just something that's up there on the shelf.
The first goal is about identity and belonging, and that identity and belonging is embedded in ASHTR, so we know quite a lot about identity and belonging. The anti-bias goal is about supporting children's individual and group identity. So the individual identity is really important, but the group identity is equally important. So where do the children come from?
In most homes where that child is the centre of their parents, grandparents, families' world. So they come in with this positive self and group identity. And we, as early years educators, have the power to either build on that positive self-identity, or we can damage it. This, for me, is critical, that if we ignore diversity, if we don't work to ensure that every child can see themselves, their family, their way of life, their culture positively reflected, how is that going to be impacted? Is it going to impact on them? What is the child supposed to feel when they come into a service where they're not visible? But it's not only the minority children who are damaged, also majority children are damaged. Because what messages are they getting? Oh, he's not important. My way is the right way to be, because look, I see myself everywhere. The other child, I don't belong. My way is not the right way to be.
The second goal is about being comfortable with difference. So for children, what we want to do is open that space up for them to engage together and find out about each other. Be curious. They are curious. They're finding out about the world, actually. So they are going to be coming up against differences. And what do we do with those differences?
I think we sometimes, as a majority, kind of forget that we too have ethnicity. We too think about things based on kind of how we were socialized as a child, our family. They have all impacted us. And as human beings, we all have biases. That's part of our human condition. And again, as a team, we will think about, okay, how comfortable are we with diversity?
What we want to do as adults is actually to ensure that how we respond in situations where diversity issues emerge is reinforcing the positive nature of diversity, as opposed to asking children to be quiet when they ask questions, or getting a bit shocked when they ask a difficult question, or say they don't like something in particular. And that can be anything. It can be when children open their lunch boxes and one child says, "Ugh, I don't like that," or "I don't like the smell," and then it goes around the table. How do we respond to that? How do we, talk about that with the children so that we're countering some of the things that come up for children? But gender is one of the really important ones for young children because they're socialized from the beginning. They're already pinking and bluing, as you might say, from a very, very early stage. And you can do this and you can do that. And that happens across the board. Why is a child who comes into the settings not able to speak? Why is a child speaking in funny ways? What words are they using? Children will ask those curious questions, and we have to know how to address them. So that's why the adults need to do the work themselves. And then it's easier to do the work with the children around those issues. The third goal is about critically thinking about bias and discrimination and racism and homophobia and all those isms that come along with the diversity that we're talking about and those multiple diversities. So what do we know about them? How much do we know about racism? How much do we know about how children and their families fare in society? So how much do we know about the traveller community, other than maybe the biases that we have? What else do we know? What do we know about the communities that are coming into our country? How do we find out more about them? Do we think it's worth finding out more about them? Or are we just dealing with the children that come into us? What I'm saying is that those biases need to be explored. You may not carry, some biases, but you will certainly carry some, And so it's that exploration and understanding how that works in society, is really important. So that goal is a really crucial goal. Because if you don't understand how prejudice, discrimination, stereotypes work in society, then maybe you don't understand how those processes work and how they affect people.
That first goal for adults is around really going on that journey, looking at yourself, being aware of that, and crucially ensuring that that does not impact on how you work with children and families who come into your setting. So it's about being a professional. Over the years, I've learned that a good starting place is around ensuring that the team members attend diversity and equality training. So the AIM diversity and equality training has been available out there, and it is a great starting point. It is raising awareness. It is an amazing resource to bring back to your service and to begin to use it as a team, kind of use some of the exercises to begin to create. And I think it's hugely important that for as a team, that we have a safe space to talk about discomforts, that we hear the voice of dissent, that we have a chance to support each other, to talk about that we have an opportunity to think about ourselves. Because Louise Dermot-Sparks, when she developed this anti-bias approach, she developed goals not only for children, but for adults. Because she said, if we are to do this work with children and families, we first need to do it for ourselves. We need to be genuine. Again, it's always important that we are reflective practitioners, that we have opportunities. In the day, I try to ensure that we kind of sit down in the moment, have a cup of tea, and talk about what happened. What do we do well?
And then the fourth goal is about standing up for each other. This is all part of empathy development and children's social and emotional development as well. We want children to be able to stand up for themselves first and then stand up for others in sort of difficult situations. We are human beings, and we learn about these issues at a very, very early age. We make meaning of what happens around us at a very, very early age, including learning biases. So we need to explore those in order to be able to actually work with the children in a very open way. How good are we as adults at standing up for people who are in difficult situations? And I think it's much easier, if you understand that, to actually support children to do that. The understanding comes with what we want for children in society. You know, we want a better society. And I suppose that's the essence of the anti-bias approach, is that it's about human diversity, and it's about us wanting a better society for everyone.
Like, we are very lucky in that we have a diverse staff team. Their lived experience and the sharing of that, again, in a safe space, really supports the rest of the team to develop empathy and to learn accurately about difference and diversity and prejudice and discrimination and racism, and the impact that has on every human being, be it child or adult.